This nurse, Lucy Letby, this murderer, she's the most prolific child killer of modern times. She got a whole life order after being found guilty of killing 7 babies, attempting to kill 6 more. But it seems that there are some people who are just not remotely convinced she is guilty.
Well, Facebook groups have been set up in support of Lucy's appeal. She's appealing some of those cases that haven't yet gone to trial.
Letby's appeal.
Letby's appeal.
Yeah. People put Christian names in now for murders and things, and they should go by the surname.
Well, look, some of them are arguing she got away with her crimes because she was white and a woman. So we're asking, is she able to get a fair trial, really, or does all this information out there prevent that from happening? The Crown Prosecution Service, considering Letby's case, will decide today whether or not she will face a fresh trial.
Well, joining us this morning, anti-racism activist Imran Aiton and leader of the Heritage Party, David Curtin. David, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about the verdict here and the veracity of the evidence that was given in the trial. And I think I've never seen a case like this where there's been so many questions about the verdict almost immediately. And this case is very similar to something that happened in the Netherlands, which was the case of Lucia de Burke, who was a nurse that was in prison for 7 years. And then she had an appeal, and that the verdicts were overturned. She was originally found guilty, and then she was found innocent. And there's a lot of things about this case that are very concerning. I mean, well, it's still today, when you hear reports about this on some mainstream outlets, they say there were 7 deaths in a 12-month period. Lucy was there for all of those deaths of babies, but that simply isn't true. There were 17 deaths in that 12-month period. There were 9 of them where she wasn't even there, but that's not presented to us in the media, and that wasn't presented to the jury in the court. They were presented with a spreadsheet that showed that she was there 100% of the time, when that simply wasn't true. So there's things like that which I think I'm questioning, a lot of people are questioning, and saying all of the evidence was circumstantial, absolutely all of it, and therefore the verdict is seemingly unsafe. This could be one of the biggest and greatest miscarriages of justice ever in England, and it needs to be re-looked at, and there needs to be a retrial.
I mean, you're questioning the verdict of the trial of which she was found guilty, and that had to be based on evidence that was presented in court, and the judge will have directed the jury, and it would have been a threshold for that to have reached a certain kind of level of proof. We're not actually debating whether or not her verdict was correct. We're debating whether or not the cases that didn't yet get heard should be tried. And I want to know whether or not, Iman, you think Lucy Letby will be able to have a fair trial, given she's been found guilty of all these many other cases.
I think it's incredibly hard due to the fact that prejudice is naturally involved. So what people fail to realise that, of course, it affects every aspect of our life, and it plays a vital role in our decision making, right? So how we perceive people, etc. The reason why every single person on the planet has prejudice is because of social categorizing, which is a natural cognitive process that puts everything and everyone into boxes in an attempt to simplify the world around us. And unfortunately, this leads to generalizations, stereotypes, and preconceived opinions about people, things, and places, all of which are influenced by our environment, which includes the media, what we hear, see, and read, etc. So in the case of Lucy, our environment tells us that white women who are young and university educated are not suspicious and murderers, and so therefore she wasn't perceived in that way. So it becomes quite difficult when we take into consideration prejudice, because it does affect how we perceive people. And I think that the verdict is already in, so I think people will naturally lead with their prejudice on this one.
Listen, I hear what you're saying. I'm just fascinated. So just give me this straight. You're saying if she was not white, it would be more likely that people would say, yeah, she's as guilty as heck.
It depends on many different types of prejudice, but racial prejudice is one, definitely. So obviously we're dealing with the issue of institutionalized racism and the disciplinary process. So there is a huge disparity, a disproportionality between black staff and white staff when it pertains to the disciplinary process. So for example, on average across the NHS, black people are 1.14 times more likely to be disciplined. So in other words, it would have been a lot harder if she were black to skate under the radar. Right? So it's due to the fact that we have institutionalized racism.
David, from your point of view, do you think people have been blind looking at Lucy Letby and they just can't see her crime?
No, no, not at all. I mean, I don't think this has anything to do with prejudice in terms of her color of her skin. I think people are just looking at the evidence and they're thinking, well, is this true or not? And they're asking questions about this. But, if we talk about prejudice, I think when it comes to the judicial system, most of the prejudice to me, in general, seems to be coming from the left of the political spectrum, people who pursue these narratives of critical race theory, that the country is institutionally racist and therefore white people get off more than black people. That simply isn't true, because when you're in a court of law and there's a jury of 12 people, they are presented with evidence, and the judge, to a very great extent, directs the evidence that they receive. And what is, very, very good in England, or should work in our judicial system, is that there are press reporting restrictions. So people who are in the jury should not be prejudiced by seeing information about the case before the case, outside the case, or after the case. But the thing is, with this now, there's been so much reporting over the last 4 weeks. There's been really hatred has been whipped up against Lucy, I think very, very unjustly, because there are questions about the verdict. And it's questionable whether she will get a fair trial now, because of what's been said in the media over the last 4 weeks.
Okay, Iman and David?
Prejudice is everywhere. Let me just add that. Prejudice is everywhere. Secondly, you spoke about institutionalized racism. We already had the Met Police be proven to be institutionally racist, sexist, and homophobic. And on top of that, jurors and judges are expected to ensure that their prejudice and bias does not affect their decision-making. Why? Because it leads to unfair, discriminatory practices. So again, prejudice is everywhere. It is a part of the natural human dynamic. And so you have to make a conscious decision to ensure that the media doesn't actually affect your decision-making. You have to make a conscious decision to ensure that what you hear, see, and read doesn't influence you in a negative way. So
got to leave it there, guys. Thank you. Thank you both very much indeed, Iman and David. Thank you.